Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this live 1 hour webinar, and welcome to the ENZA webinar as part of the EUSEW week and Sustainable Energy Day. Today's webinar will focus on integrated solutions to deliver a net zero system. We have an hour to listen from a distinguished speaker from the European Commission. We also have 3 very interesting projects illustrating sector coupling or energy sector integration. And we're going to hear a lot more about that, and we're looking forward to the exchange as well. To introduce myself, I'm the incoming chair of ENZA, and I'm sitting here with the outgoing chair of ENZA. She'll introduce herself shortly. I'm also, my day job is the managing director of Cogen Europe. I think that's it, actually. I'm going to hand over to Federica, who will sort of set the scene.
Yes, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Federica Sabbati. I'm the Secretary General of the European Heating Industry and just outgoing chair of ENZA. ENZA is an alliance of various associations from different sectors which have, I guess, as associations, one main goal in common: to reach net zero economy, to a net zero economy by 2050, by supporting particularly system integration. And today we will be talking about system integration, which seems like a very EU speak, if I can, word, but actually there's a real world behind it, a world of technologies and of developments that we are seeing in the market, in the field already in Europe since some times, and we will try to make it come alive a little bit with the speakers that we are having today. Just to set the scene, why are we talking about system integration? We are obviously seeing extraordinary times at the moment with an energy security crisis, an energy crisis, high costs of energies for businesses and for consumers, so households. This will lead, or is leading already, to high inflation for everybody. Probably going into an economic crisis. This doesn't sound all positive, but actually we think that there are solutions. Luckily, it's not all dark and impossible to handle, and I think European industry has been leading the way to develop technologies that can actually tackle the transition and even these critical times that we're going through. So the energy transition towards renewable sources and towards autonomy in Europe is even more important now than it has been in the past. System integration is one way of doing it. We think, and I think the Commission probably agrees because it's done a strategy on system integration, we believe that it is with system integration we can make it faster, we can make it more effective for the system, for the energy system in Europe. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the European Commission, but I will actually let my friend Hans present you, introduce you. But I'm eager to hear about how the Commission is looking at system integration, and then even more important, even more interesting, how our colleagues from the companies that are here represented today will talk about real projects for system integration that look at the side of industry, but also at the side of household. Hans, the floor to you to introduce our guest speaker.
So energy system integration, sectoral coupling, many ways of saying it, but the European Commission came out with a strategy just a few years ago before the Fit for 55, the European Green Deal, setting the scene for really a holistic approach to looking at all different key files at the same time, and sectoral integration is an important part of that. So I'm very happy, as I mentioned, to invite Ruud Kempenaar, who's the team leader for hydrogen financing international at DG Energy, and he's going to dive into it and tell us more about the Commission strategy and how perhaps this will also help us today and setting the scene for the 3 projects.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the introduction. Indeed, I was one of the people at the team in 2020 who wrote the energy system integration strategy. And I think my big hope is that this energy system integration term will not remain a bubble Brussels speak, but really become like an intrinsic part of kind of the energy discussions that we have here throughout Europe. And actually within DG Energy, the energy system integration strategy has been key also in the way we are collaborating internally, because we think that previously when we were still operating in silos, we had nuclear, we had gas, we had coal, we had oil, we had renewables, we had energy efficiency. You see, even within DG Energy itself, the interaction between these teams working on the different topics has now completely changed. So what did we do with the energy system integration strategy? Essentially, you can break it down into kind of four pillars. So the first pillar is essentially energy efficiency. Energy efficiency as a core part of our energy system, not something which comes at the end, but really as a core part in our energy system. Now, the second part is we need to have more renewables into the system, especially in the end-use sectors. We've seen growth of renewables in the electricity sector, but more renewable heat coming into our energy sector, as well as electrification. So getting electricity in those end-use sectors, which have previously and actually are still relying a lot on fossil fuels. We also introduced a third pillar there of kind of renewable and low carbon fuels. And here, of course, this is the work which I've been carrying out since then. Also, the introduction of hydrogen as one of the possibilities to actually transform electricity into a fuel, or looking at kind of biogenic fuels or low carbon fuels, which can really help us again decarbonize those end-use sectors. And then the fourth pillar is actually the idea that this system in the future will be multi-directional. So what we need for that is digitalization. We need to have a lot more information about who is the demandeur of energy, who is the supplier of energy, how do those energy flows in the different factors interact with each other, and digitalization is again a key part of that. So these are the four pillars of the energy system integration strategy. And so the key question, of course, is we published a strategy in 2020. What has happened since then? We're 2 years further. Now, first of all, I'm not going to claim it as my contribution, but of course we had the foundation of ENZA. So I think that already is a very important and tangible contribution. Having the European Net Zero Alliance actually taking up this energy system integration approach as one of your pillars. And here, I have to admit that I wish you would have been there in 2020, because you have a sentence in your statement, which I'm going to read because I thought it's so nice. It's that you want to identify synergies related to energy system integration that can accelerate the delivery of climate neutrality. That really is what this strategy was also about, trying to find those synergies and then through the energy system integration. So I'm very happy that you are taking this up and kind of through the collaborations with your different kind of members, try to put that into practice. Where I have had more influence is, of course, the Fit for 55 package, which we introduced in July 2021. And you might not see energy system integration in a lot of the specific articles which you see, but what we've done is really to try to kind of create coherence between all the different kind of pieces of legislation. Previously, we had the Renewable Energy Directive and the Energy Efficiency Directive. In the Fit for 55 package, we actually have kind of cross articles referring to each other. You know, you can become more energy efficient with more renewables. You need to be more energy efficient because then the share of renewable energy goes up. So those interlinkages will be very, very clear. It's also in the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. Here, a much more clear link is established between integrating renewables into the buildings and the ability to create these net zero energy buildings. The same goes for the gas and hydrogen package. We had a gas package in the past. What we now have on the table as a piece of legislation is really kind of integrating gas, low carbon gas, hydrogen, all in the one and the same package. And then also other pieces of legislation, for example, the Energy Taxation Directive and the EU ETS and the revision of that, trying to build those interlinkages between the pieces in order to ensure that we have kind of a coherent approach across all of the vectors. Of course, one of the important elements here is that we brought this out as a vision in terms of the Fit for 55 package, but now it's being discussed. And I think one of the key challenges for all of us is to try to keep this narrative in the pieces of legislation, making sure that they are coherent with each other, and that we can really have the ability to kind of have energy efficiency and renewables and electrification and low carbon fuels play and interact with each other, because that's, I think, what we need to have. Now, actually, we are also coming out next week. Is it next week? Yeah, at least in October, with the digitalization package. It's actually the fourth pillar of this energy system integration, which has been partly introduced in the Fit for 55 package, but I think a lot more can be done. And this digitalization communication we will come out will really kind of unpack where digitalization can help this integration of the energy system. So fast forwarding to today, you already mentioned it, we're in an energy crisis. So has energy system integration as a strategy delivered? Not yet. I think if we look at today's situations, we have energy consumption that dropped during the COVID times, but rebounds really quickly afterwards. So the energy efficiency is still not there as kind of a core principle. We still don't have sufficient alternative energy sources. I remember in the energy system integration strategy talking about biogas and the abilities for producing biogas in terms of the potential that's there. We're here today and we still don't have the volumes that we actually want to have in order to have an alternative to the fossil fuels that we so much rely upon. I also think we still don't have this ability to switch from one vector to another sufficiently. You see heat pumps coming in, you see electrification coming in, using electricity to provide heat. You see some renewable heat coming in here and there, but this ability to switch from one to the other at scale, I think is still not there, and we need that. And I think last but not least, and we see that especially in the emergency measures that we're taking, we still don't have the ability to smartly match our demand with supply. How are we going to kind of engage with the end consumers so that they can kind of shift their demand to those times that the electricity prices are cheap, shift to the demand when we don't need gas for other purposes. The ability to do so by providing information about doing this kind of interactively, I think is still something which we really have to work upon. So, what are the conclusions of all of this? We have an energy system integration strategy. We have you working on it. But I think it's really important that, especially in the current crisis, we keep the energy system integration aspect always in our mind. So not only solely focusing on kind of replacing fossil fuel suppliers with the other, but think about, okay, how can we actually start diversifying those suppliers to really help the energy crisis? I think there are business opportunities for energy system integration. So really kind of trying to find those projects, and I think we're going to see some of those, where you can really think about creating a business case for these end consumers to smartly switch from electricity to gas to hydrogen and back again to ensure their end demand. The other thing, which I think is really important and in the current crisis, is to think about how can we introduce technologies which are flexible, adaptable, and multi-purpose, so that if we have another crisis, if energy security is high on the agenda, we can kind of use those technologies to deal with that. So I had a bit of a preview on the kind of the projects that we get today. So I'm actually quite excited because I think a lot of those principles are really kind of clearly explained there. And I think that's always a lot easier than reading the energy system integration strategy. So maybe I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you, Ruud. That's actually very interesting because we seem very aligned on the concept. We need to bring system integration. It has benefits. We need to bring it in the field. There's not enough yet. We obviously don't expect the legislator to make it all happen in the market. That's clearly also why we are there as industries. And we will see indeed some of the solutions here today. Just maybe I'll seize the opportunity because I represent somehow the industry that makes heat pumps, that is active in the building sector. That's one of the difficult sectors to to decarbonize. And there we do think that the system integration approach that you just talked about is particularly relevant because the building stock is so different, so varied, not just north, south of Europe, but also within the same city, within the same region. You have different type of buildings, you have different types of insulation of buildings, and you have different energy infrastructure that leads to that building. So changing and interchanging or changing the sources of energy from fossil based to renewable based is not always unidirectional. It's always one solution. So I think we do find that the best approach. How do you see that specific for the building sector? Because it's one of those that are called not too difficult to abate, not difficult to decarbonize. If I can make a little criticism, and therefore the one solution fits all seems to be going very much strong. But are there, according to you, some options for system integration there as well?
So I think I was, let's have some water.
Too difficult question.
No. I was actually quite encouraged that after COVID we had the Recovery and Resilience Fund, that member states actually deliberately, and actually if you compare it to other pieces, quite a lot of funding went into the buildings sector. So I think people are start thinking about it. And of course, there's no one-fits-all solution. I think that's also not what we think from Brussels should happen. But what I do think is that there are some one-fits-all principles that can be introduced. And their energy efficiency, I think, is really one of those key principles. If you have a new building, if you have an existing building, if you have an old building, key effort should be put in energy efficiency. Because that really can help kind of the integration of the other solutions. There again, digitalization is another element. It can really kind of be a core principle, and every single house can have the ability to interact. So I think there's some really core principles that we can try to find and emulate and really bring into the field.
Yeah, and of course we will talk about it today with one of our speakers who will specifically focus on the building. Are there any questions maybe online? We haven't said that, but there is a possibility of putting questions
coming in online. So far we only have one, but it actually is quite linked to my question/statement. If we have a little bit more time, I know we only have an hour, but I feel I have to ask it anyways. We were talking a lot about buildings, but we're really not talking about the whole system. And important for my members, at least from Cogen Europe, is looking at the whole system, the whole value chain, not just final energy savings. It's important to insulate buildings. It's important to install LED lights. It's important to have efficient systems in the buildings, but also the energy coming to those buildings need to be generated in an efficient way. Or you need to avoid the losses from that generation point to those buildings as much as possible. So primary energy savings is an important role. It does not get as much lip service as perhaps it should, for example, in the European Parliament or even from the European Commission. Sometimes it'd be a bit of the bastard child, but it's an important part of the pie, especially if you want to decarbonize, because heat represents about 50% of the emissions in Europe today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the principles in the energy system integration strategy, which when we wrote it, tried to kind of look at this as well, is that we said it's not just the endpoint. It really is kind of this kind of whole holistic value chain approach that you need to have. And we also talked a lot about, at that point in time, circularity. And I think circularity in a more broader way. And that, for example, waste heat, I think is really one of those excellent examples where, we should really take waste heat as one of the opportunities to help integrate this energy system. Because just letting it go will really kind of, essentially is against this idea of, once you put energy in, let's make the best use of that energy throughout the whole value chain and not only at the end.
All right. Well,
you don't have other questions?
No, that was a question from the audience spliced in with my own question/comment. So I think we're doing good for time. I think we should maybe thank Ruud for his contribution. I don't know whether you have time to stay, or maybe you run back to the office and log in again so you can listen to the three presentations on the projects. But maybe without further ado, we'll start with the projects, examples of energy system integration, sector coupling. And the first one actually is quite interesting. It's actually funded or co-funded with EU money. It's an EU project called High Flex Power, looking at industrial CHP using hydrogen from excess renewables, curtailed renewables, wind and solar, upgrading the CHP. It's a paper mill in France, so it's very interesting. So I'm going to introduce the speaker from Siemens Energy. He's the project strategy manager, Ian Amos. The floor is yours. You have 5 minutes to let us know more about this very new but very interesting project.
Okay, thank you, Hans, and thank you to ENZA for the opportunity to provide this description and update of the High Flex Power Hydrogen Technology Project. So we're in a very exciting phase at the moment, and hopefully I'll be able to give you a little bit of an update of where we are. So we would just show you the structure.
Do we need to change? Voila.
Oops, there we go. So the key aim of High Flex Power is to provide a industrial demonstration of a power to hydrogen to power sort of integrated plant. And as Hans said, this is it's a European funded project. It has as main partners Siemens Energy, ENGIE, and Centrax, and also there are a number of academic institutes that are contributing as well. I'll come on to their contribution in a minute. But we would like to acknowledge the contribution from the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Programme. As you can see, it's a 4-year project with a sort of value of about 15 million euros. And the intention is to demonstrate we can reduce CO2 emissions from electrical power generation using hydrogen. So green hydrogen is generated from renewable resources in an electrolyzer and then stored for subsequent regeneration for electric and heat. I think you already mentioned that we need to make sure we are very efficient with the reuse of energy. So heat capture is important. And by doing this, it's really a method of offsetting available power from use. So you can use hydrogen as a storage medium and then regenerate when you need it and when the renewables aren't available. The reduction in CO2 really is dependent on the blend of hydrogen that you use in natural gas. Of course, with 100% hydrogen use, so you have 100% CO2 reduction. And if you achieve a blend of about 30% of hydrogen with the natural gas by volume, that's equivalent to about 11% reduction in CO2. So just to talk about the main partners, so Siemens Energy is the overall project coordinator and responsible for the development of the hydrogen combustion technology and the incorporation of that into the gas turbine, which is used in the demonstration plant. And that's an SGT 400, it's a 13 megawatt class gas turbine. And Siemens Energy also supplied the electrolyzer to the project. ENGIE, they are the operators of the pre-existing cogeneration plant, and that supplies heat and power to the Smurfit Kappa paper plant. ENGIE have developed the plant concept, and they've designed, built and commissioned the hydrogen facility. And that includes the generation of hydrogen using the electrolyzer, compression and storage of the hydrogen. and also they have designed and installed the mixing plant to mix the hydrogen with natural gas prior to delivery to the gas turbine package. Centrax are the original suppliers of the CX400 in the cogeneration site, and they're responsible for modifications and upgrade to the gas turbine package to enable the use of blends in the gas. So also acknowledge the contribution from DLR and the academic partners, University College London, Duisburg Essen and Lund, for supporting technical developments. And I think a key part of this project is also the work that National Technical University of Athens is doing, looking at the economic and environmental social assessments for these power to hydrogen to power projects. So just looking at the timeline, so we started in May 2020, and the objective was to have 2 demonstration seasons. The first one in the summer of 2022, where the intention was to complete the build of the installation, put in the modified gas turbine and demonstrate operation with some blend of hydrogen in the mix. So this really was to prove out the whole sort of integrated concept. And then next year in 2023, we will be putting in the core with a modified burner, which we are developing in Berlin for up to 100% hydrogen operation. So the key results that we've had so far is we've just completed phase 1 testing on the September. So we're not ready to really give any detailed results, but we have successfully run the engine with a hydrogen blend. So we have generated, stored, and mixed hydrogen up to the levels of about 30%. And also, just right to report that early on this year, we did test our new burner at our Clean Energy Centre in Siemens Energy in Berlin, and took that to 100% hydrogen at full engine conditions. So I think the next steps are to analyse the data that we have and prepare for the 2023 tests for the full 100% hydrogen operation. And I think that's pretty much all I can get through in about 5 minutes.
Thank you, Ian, excuse me. Thank you for the presentation and overview of the very interesting project. Just a reminder to everyone online, we do take questions. We have our own questions, but we would rather actually hear from you. And I'm pleased that we have a few more. And this is actually for you, Ian. Is the switch to hydrogen possible with the existing industrial site infrastructure? And in your view, is such an upgrade feasible, scalable to other industrial CHP plants?
Yes, I think it is. So this was a pre-existing cogeneration site. But ENGIE had to build the hydrogen infrastructure, as I said, the electrolyzer, the compressor, the storage. And we have put in this year, we have modified the gas turbine, and we put in the new burners for this relatively modest sort of hydrogen blend. And next year we will be replacing that with the 100% capability. So we are demonstrating that it is retrofittable on the existing site and application, and I think that's really part of an exciting part of the project. And it is scalable. Yes, the technology that is being developed is something which can be scaled up to larger products and larger power plants as well, and that's what we are looking at that right now.
Thank you, Ian, and for everyone online, we will make these presentations available and links to the specific project. So if you want more information, you can find it all there. I'll hand over to Federica, and she will introduce the next project speaker.
Yes, thank you, Hans. And this is a nice project that looks at buildings and picks up a number of keywords that you've mentioned, that I've mentioned, and therefore can be absolutely interesting. That is, I introduce Nadine Walter from Bosch Thermotechnology in Germany. Nadine, you are somewhere on the screen. Here you are. Hi, welcome. You are product manager hybrids in Bosch, and you will talk to us about the optimized combination between heat pumps and fuel boilers, including hydrogen-ready boilers. So here we're talking electricity, we're talking fuels, which could be natural gas, biogas, I guess, and biomethane, etc., and hydrogen. What more system integration you want? Nadine, can I give you the floor? I think you also have 1 or 2 slides.
Yes, you can. Yeah.
Over to you.
I think I should be able to, show the slides. Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks for having me here as well as a speaker. And I would like to take a look with you at how hybrid systems act as a bridging solution to significantly lower CO2 emissions in existing buildings. And it is a step-by-step transition that still ensures that heating comfort people are used to is being kept. So you're not losing out as a consumer here. And let me quickly explain what hybrid systems mean in the context of heating. So for everyone who might not be too familiar with that hybrid systems so far. So hybrid systems integrate 2 independent heat generators in 1 unit. Either you have a gas or an oil condensing boiler, and then it's being combined with an electricity-driven heat pump that draws its energy from air and water. So this energy mix combines renewable with highly efficient and offers the greatest possible freedom to choose between the more favorable energy, depending on the current situation, on many different factors the house is being in. So in Germany, as you might be aware of, the coalition agreement stipulates that new heating systems should be operated on the basis of at least 65% renewable energies. So the legislative has set the 65% target to come into effect already 1 year earlier. So it will be effective from January 1st in 2024 onwards. So what is currently a German target might also become a European goal in the short run to achieve a greener future. So, and I would only like to focus on 2 topics here on the slide. It's a bit filled, and otherwise the 5 minutes will already be over. So, but I just want to let you know here that with a good hybrid system, the 65% renewable energy share can definitely be achieved easily. And it can also be installed directly into an existing and unrenovated building, which is also a big advantage. And when the renovation might take place, you already have a future-proof solution in place with regard to energy saving. So you can the hybrid easily adapts then to the improved building situation, which is a very big advantage of the hybrid system in comparison to having a heat pump only solution. And and let me show you this with a graph here. Let me explain you with this graph to better understand how the majority of needed heat energy can be covered with just a small heat pump. So here in red, you can see the red graph shows the heat demand of the building. So the colder it gets, actually, the higher the energy need of the building is, which is quite obvious, more or less. And the blue bars represent the hours the heat pump is being used. So you can see, during colder times, of course, the hours are lower than in degrees of 4 to 10 or 12 degrees. So the hours of the running heat pumps are definitely higher. So the dimensioning of the hybrid is usually based on the building heat load with 100% at minus 10 degrees. And the majority of yearly operation hours of the heat pump, as just said, are between minus 2 degrees and 15 degrees. And every building has, depending on its insulation status, a heat demand. So the blue bars represent the hours, as said, that the heat pump is being used. And the contribution, how this energy is provided, is represented by the yellow for the boiler, and with green represents the coverage of the heat pump. So, for example, if you at -6 degrees, you have a number of hours the heat pump is being operated is 25, and 2/3 of it are covered with the boiler, and 1/3 is being covered by the heat pump. And when multiplying those hours with the performance share of the heat pump, you achieve 60 up to 80% of the yearly heating energy that is being covered by purely the heat pump. So that is a big advantage. It's important that the heat pump is not only running in the bivalent alternative mode, but also in the bivalent parallel mode. So that also in colder temperatures, such as for example -4 degrees, an energetic contribution comes from it. So that is also important to tell. And now I would like to show you that with a concrete example of how the heating load of a building looks like before and after renovation. So this is actually a house we have done a field test trial with. My colleagues have done an extensive research on that, and they have covered over 1 year of taking a look at the factors that are being involved. And we have proven, or we have shown during that field test trial, that as you can see here, in the lower section, the black graph shows what the heat pump can contribute. So that's the capacity of the heat pump. And the red graph, also highlighted with the number 1. So you can see the building, how it looked like in an unrenovated status. It shows the heat load is covered by a 30 kilowatt boiler on the right hand side. So beforehand, they only had the 30 kilowatt boiler in place. And afterwards, without the renovation taking place, they installed the hybrid system. They now had the 30 kilowatt boiler plus an 8 kilowatt outdoor unit. So this is a multi-family house, actually, with 6 units that are using this hybrid system. And with a hybrid system, 80% of the heating energy is being provided by the heat pump. So as you can see here, you can already, even without the renovation taking place, the heating energy provided by the boiler was significantly lowered from 131 kilowatt hours per square meter and year down to 27 kilowatt hours per square meter and year. So that's a very huge reduction that already could be established without having a renovation in place. And 80%, as said, were the share of the heat pump. And then number 2 shows the graph in blue, shows the heat load in a renovated building. So you can see that the overall heating energy has significantly been lowered, but we can see that the share of the heat pump is not rising dramatically anymore. And the total heat load is being reduced, and the heat pump is covering the biggest share of it. So after renovation, as we can see here, before we had the 14 kilowatt, after renovation, only 14 kilowatt are needed instead of the 30 kilowatt to warm up the building. So that's a significant reduction, as you can see on the far left down there. So there was a big improvement. That could take place for that household, or for all the families living in that house. So just to give you an example of what can be achieved by simply installing a hybrid system into an existing building.
Thank you, Nadine. Very interesting. I have a couple of questions. Just one from me first. I monopolize my position as moderator, co-moderator here. So there's of course gains in terms of energy consumption. So on the buildings, even without a massive renovation, which, however, is one of it is still important. But what about? Do you have any data, or do you have a feeling, if nothing else, or an educated feeling on the effects on the grids, on the electricity grid, for example? Because that's one of the issues that we've seen in some countries. The overcharge with the electrification increasing. The stress on the grid gets higher, and these solutions, are they helping? To what extent is there an overview that you have?
No, not for the time being. I mean, I don't have an overview at hand at the moment whether the grid is really stable enough to, if a huge amount of hybrid systems would be in place, I mean, with regard to electricity need. But yeah, so far, I mean, we have been informed, or it should be stable. I mean, even though, I mean, there are also heat pumps or electric solutions, single electric solutions being installed without having the boiler to step in, actually. So that's even a more future-proof solution with a hybrid system, because then the boiler can take over should there be any issues with the electricity. So actually, it's a two-part solution we are offering. So you're not only relying on one energy source, but you're having a combination. Depending on the circumstances, you can easily switch from one to the other.
Yeah, and that helps indeed.
And we only have the possibility, sorry, just to quickly, to become 100% CO2 free if we use green fuel like methane or biogas in the future, or also hydrogen. So that's also the possibility to switch over to that, either with modifications on the boiler or without even. I mean, if you use methane, biogas, or green fuel, you can use it directly as a combustion, and the boiler remains, and you don't have to change anything. So that would be the first step to become even more CO2 free. But with regard to electricity, of course, the infrastructure needs to be there, and the grid needs to be available. That's true.
Yeah, there was a question. There's a few questions, but one, because we didn't mention so much the element of hydrogen there. You just talked about biogas and biomethane. How about the compatibility with hydrogen?
Yeah, I mean, if hydrogen is available, then the heat cell of the boiler would have to be modified. So as of current, there is no solution from our side or available for it yet. So, but that's more or less a future proof or a future solution that we are looking at or aiming to achieve. But for the time being, that is not in place yet. So, yeah.
But there are
hydrogen ready,
yeah, exactly, hydrogen ready. Of course, yeah, you're talking about the availability of hydrogen there. Yeah, that's of course something work in progress. But if I understand correctly, there's definitely heating, gas boilers that can work with hydrogen. They are hydrogen ready, and they can already today get blends of up to 30%. So that could supply that part of the gas CO2 free. I don't know if I have time for another question to pick it up. Maybe one quickly? No, I don't have any question. I have monopolized too much. Hans.
It was a good presentation, and there were lots of questions, but we'll find a way to connect everyone and have their questions answered somehow. So we'll move on to the next and last intervention presentation. We're going to Romania, where we will hear about a combined cooling and heat power plant, so trigeneration, a CCHP. It is a hydrogen-ready trigeneration plant serving a data center. If I'm not mistaken, it is the largest data center in Romania, where it's using a combination of cooling and heat and power from the power plant. So I'd like to introduce Sorana Ionescu, who is the Managing Director for Partnerships at Cluster Power. I'll give you the floor, and we're looking forward to your intervention and learning more about this integrated solution. I'm afraid.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, great. Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to present to you a unique project, which is the cluster power solution for energy generation. But first, I would really like to start with a bit of a background. So why we do this and why is this required? So just to give you some numbers, every day we produce a lot of data. And in 1 year, we produce more than it has been produced last year by 1.2. So that means that by 2025, we will have around 163 zettabytes of data available in the world. Now, to give you an idea of how much data that means, if I would have a coin for every byte of data, and I would stack them together, it could take me, this tower could take me around 70,000 times to Alpha Centauri. So that's a lot of data. Now, why is this important? It's important because of what we do with the data, right? So it's not just that we produce a huge amount of data, it's what we do with it. And what we do with it is help humanity thrive. And that means drug discovery. That means optimizing renewable energy generation, as was discussed today. That means fight against crime and protecting the vulnerable groups. So in the background, all of these new innovative solutions, like AI, for example, all of these require innovative, powerful, efficient, scalable, and trustworthy infrastructure, both in terms of technology, as well as energy infrastructure. And of course, the key word of the day, it needs to be more efficient and environmentally friendly. So when we set out this trip to this adventure to develop a data center, everything was designed from the very beginning, taking into consideration these key elements. So last year, we have started to build a huge hyperscale data center in Romania that will scale up to 200 megawatts. That currently has available this first data center and the entire energy infrastructure and power plant. And what we have done, we have basically taken as a primary source of power, and we are using MTU Rolls-Royce engines with gas to produce energy, heating, and cooling. So basically, the waste heat is collected and put into some chillers that transform the heating into cooling. And therefore, we don't really lose any heat. We don't waste the heat. We use it to cool down the data center. Now, this equipment requires a lot of a very stable environment. So it's really important to maintain the temperature and humidity and everything else okay inside. So it's really important that you have a reliable source of energy. And we are using this 3-generation innovation as a primary source of power. And now, as far as we know, this has not been done in the industry as a primary source of power again. Of course, we have a secondary source of power and a tertiary source of power because we are a tier 3 data center. So we need to be as redundant and resilient as possible. So the result of this innovative solution is that we have a power usage effectiveness of 1.1, whereas the average in the industry, in the data center industry globally, is around 1.6, 1.7. What that means is that for every kilowatt of IT equipment power, for the cooling part and all the other things that consume power, you need around 0.6, 0.7 additional kilowatts. We only need 0.1 using this solution. So it's at the core of our business and at the core of this project, efficiency was always on our mind, and implementing this solution has helped us to do this. Another thing that I would really like to mention here is that the power plant is hydrogen ready. As long as we have a hydrogen source. So that's another key factor, especially when we think about what is going on in the energy sector as right now. So this is new. It has been basically validated by doing a lot of tests. It's working right now. So it has been validated by various tests. And the industry specialists have confirmed that it's a working solution for data centers. You have here some pictures. In the left upper corner, you can see the chillers that collect the heating from the energy generators. And here in the lower right side, you have the cooling system, basically the ventilators, which do not need to cool the air. They just need to push the cooled air into the data center because the air is cooled already from the chillers. So that's about it.
Thank you very much. We haven't received any further questions, but maybe just to follow up on your point regarding the hydrogen readiness of the trigeneration plant. What do you mean specifically? Can you already start blending up to 30%, or is it something
Yes.
that can eventually run on 100% hydrogen with a few modifications?
So as we speak, we don't need any modifications to run on hydrogen.
Okay,
So
very good.
it's all set.
That's very clear.
That's great. We've had 3 very good examples, very different examples and different applications, and I think that really boils down to the essence of what ENZA is. We are 17 very different associations, but we share the same goals and aspirations. We are advocating for cross-sectoral, cross-vectoral solutions with the ultimate goal to be climate neutral, net zero by 2050. I was going to say, allow you to say a few words, or
No,
maybe
actually, I
the
wanted to
Commission
ask-
to respond.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to ask Ruud if he has any feedback on any of the points. There was even on waste heat that we discovered that you mentioned before. Any feedback on any questions?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about like making a scorecard and then see throughout the presentations what kind of the different elements which have been introduced into these projects.
Type of Eurovision, maybe.
Yes, indeed. Well, first of all, I think it's really exciting to see that you have projects from 3 different countries across Europe all working on these kind of principles. So that is, I think it's a first real feedback for me. The second one, which I think in all of the 3 projects, what you're seeing is that you're working on a solution which works today, can work in 2030, and you're already thinking about how can it be working in 2050. So that, I think, is another part of this energy system integration strategy, really thinking about, okay, how can we kind of cross this whole transition. Now, there were some questions about, okay, so how then, if we have all of those solutions, do we integrate it into an infrastructure that is able to deliver the different kind of, whether it's electricity, whether it's natural gas, whether it's biomethane, or whether it's hydrogen. And I think that's another element which I think I would be very interesting and keen to learn more about. How then, if we get these solutions, can we also connect them to infrastructure which is able to deliver those multiple energy carriers to these projects?
I mean, I think there's probably also something that our colleagues can chip in, but putting my head on there's an initiative of the Commission, which is the Clean Hydrogen Alliance, that is looking specifically at also the readiness of the infrastructure on hydrogen. So the current infrastructure that now delivers natural gas, how can it deliver also hydrogen? So there's certainly work in progress, and I mean, you're a member of it as well, so you obviously are also know about this. I think it's very important that there is this, this common goal to deliver exactly what you're saying, the 2030, but also the 2050. I think the energy sector is a sector that needs investment that are not, needs big investments and for the long term. So if you don't have this strategy in place, then you're gonna fall short. So it's really important to have that, and certainly for the hydrogen is something that we're seeing emerging, but also of course on the electricity side, because that will be a big part of the decarbonization path for a number of sectors or part of sectors. So that's definitely something that we see emerging, and we think that it has to work together. Otherwise, we will spend more time, more money, and probably not reach the goal. At least this is what we are working towards with ENZA and the associations that are in it that represent all of the portfolio. I mean, in my case, represented the heating systems that work both with electricity, gas, and solar and others. So we think it's very important that we deliver that energy transition in a sustainable way, and the sustainable way is an integrated way. I don't know if we want to pick up. We have probably 2 more minutes. Let me see. We have 2 more minutes to pick up maybe one of the. There was an interesting.
There was a question for the speaker from Bosch.
Yeah. Hold on. Which one was it? Here on the switch to. Yeah, the specific on technologies one, i.e. we talked about hybrids, or you talked about hybrid systems, Nadine, and that's of course very much a technology that works today, not only in Germany, you said that a different project, but we're seeing this market growing also in the Netherlands, in Italy, and so it's not just one example, but there was a question about the possibility of combining in a hybrid system, a heat pump and a fuel cell micro CHP, either on site or on neighborhood, let's say, level. I don't know if Bosch is thinking about this to hybridize, and whether these combinations be taken into account, because that would be also an interesting technology, perhaps on a bigger scale, not just an apartment or a single family house, but exactly. So we're going from the building residential side to perhaps a bigger one. Nadine.
Yeah, I mean, for the time being, or what our department is focusing on is single family houses or smaller multi-family houses, but not really big housing systems. But in the UK, for example, we are also looking at social housing, where a lot of apartments are being considered of using hybrid systems. But so far, I mean, for bigger installations, that is also being considered on the side of Bosch. So other colleagues are already looking into the feasibility of having that installed in the near future. But from my side, we are looking at the residential opportunities to get hybridized or to make it a European solution. Yeah. So actually, I cannot say that much on the question for the time being. That's what
it's a tip for the future. It's a tip for the future.
Yes.
I think
it definitely is. Yeah, but for the time being, we're focusing on the residential hybrid systems and to make them more, or make everyone aware in Europe that it's a good solution and a quick installation. For existing buildings. Yeah.
Exactly, and existing buildings are indeed the more difficult ones to decarbonize, as we know, so that has a relevance of scale. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So plug and play is the key word here. I mean, taking different technologies and different solutions for different applications. Yeah. You're never going to have the exact same building. Yeah. Heat pumps are useful for some buildings. Then sometimes you need a hybrid system with a boiler, or it could be a fuel cell micro CHP providing that heat, but also electricity for a heat pump. So there's a big system to play with. And I think we need to wrap it up. We only have a few more minutes. We have 3 minutes. But I think first, thank Ruud for staying with us for the full hour. I think it was tremendous to have you participate and have your intervention, to listen from the Commission's perspective. Obviously, right now, I'm sure you're all very, very busy with what's happening now and looking for short, medium, and long-term solutions. We need lose focus in the long term, but also trying to fix solutions that will have an impact positively in the long term. So we thank you for that and appreciate that you were able to listen to the 3 examples coming from the ENZA members. Just to repeat what Federica mentioned at the beginning, I mean, ENZA is a group of like-minded associations, 17 different associations representing different parts of the sector, different technology solutions, different fuel solutions and applications. And we work together with the common goal to be climate neutral by 2050, if not earlier. So we're working together, and sector coupling or energy system integration is a theme that I think binds us all together and makes us stronger. And we do these sort of things to sort of illustrate best practices and hopefully common practices in the future, using the different technologies together in an efficient and cost-effective way as much as possible for people's homes, buildings, SMEs, and industry, of course. We need to continue to remain competitive in Europe as well. So also thank you to Federica for being my co-moderator and also the outgoing ENZA chair, and thanking her for her work over the last 6 to 8 months. She thought she was retiring at the end of June, but we brought her back. So thank you again for working with me to organize an event. And look out, we plan to continue to be visible and organizing different events, and also continuing to share best practices, case studies. So take a look, follow us on social media, come and visit our website from time to time, and we promise to have new material there to continue to illustrate, the importance of energy system integration and working towards that final goal of climate neutrality as quickly as possible, but as securely as possible. We will make everything available online as quickly as physically possible. Again, thank you for your attention.